beings. Trans people are not magical, mystical beings that are not that are not impacted by market conditions. You know, in some ways, I think the Democratic Party is so successfully created this narrative that like they weaponize against Bernie Sanders, for example, with like cynical identity politics, where they were like, oh, Bernie is bad on black issues because he doesn't talk about criminal justice enough. It's like, first of all, he does. And secondly, not only does Bernie talk about that, but he also talks about other issues that are other issues that are genuinely impactful for everyone. Like when Bernie's talking about universal health care, if black people are disproportionately fucked over by the current healthcare system, given the economic conditions that black people are facing in this country, then universal health care helps black people too. It disproportionately helps black people, as a matter of fact. That's it. As long as you're not fucking running around and being like, yeah, no, we're gonna do universal health care except for black people, in the way that like FDR carved out, specific subsects of the American working class in the New Deal era, in the OG New Deal. As long as you don't do that, then it's great. And Democrats have cynically countered against that position, have cynically painted themselves as like, no, you can only be woke and an advocate for social justice if you're like if you're channeling hyper specific campaign promises. Anyway, I want to watch this Jimmy the Giant video about how he escaped the alt-right. And apparently he actually gives a shout out to Destiny in here somewhere, but I still want to watch it.
It is brought to you by Squarespace. Yes, my brothers, my brodies, my woadies. I'm going to do another one of these little talk to cams. You might have noticed, through some of my videos, I officially joined the woke brigade. It's unfortunate, I didn't really want to, but I'm going to talk how we got here. My political arc has been pretty insane. At one point, I was in a Nico Malama video supporting Trump. That's me. I'll admit it. Blurry boy.
Trauma Reporters UK. I'm here. Look at my hat. I love Donald Trump.
So today we're going to talk about how I managed to escape the alt-right pipeline.
Up yours, woke moralists. How big is Luton?
It's 200,000 population.
And how many lost?
45.
There will never be peace on this earth so long as we have this book. It's a violent and cursed book.
Attacks on mosques, other minority communities singled out, wanton violence alongside racist rhetoric.
Seems Jimmy the Giant was a real Brexit geezer. What the fuck happened? What the fuck happened, Jimmy? You were on the right side of history, mate. Lad, you were a proper bloke. A proper Brexit geezer. The woke got you, eh?
When I was a young gangster, a YG, I was a little bruh, right? A little bruh. I'm about 13 years old.
And this motherfucker looked like JonTron.
We're invited into school. It was mandatory, we weren't invited. And we had to do a speech. So, my mate goes up and he does the history of Chelsea Football Club. A girl goes up and she does about horse riding. I go up with my little thumb drive, plug it in, 9/11. So I basically proceed to radicalise a classroom of young, impressionable 13-year-olds as to why the American government did 9/11.
Who do you believe was behind 9/11?
Criminal elements of the military-industrial complex, the same ones that staged Gulf of Tonkin, the same ones that staged the mass shootings of Operation Gladio.
Right.
Ooh,
I was in this kind of like early conspiracy theory bubble. But what I want to say is it was interesting, right? Because at that time, being a conspiracy theorist wasn't left and right. It was just anti-establishment. And so whilst I was listening to Alex Jones, I'd also be listening to the Young Turks and listening about Occupy Wall Street. So when I was young, I was just a sort of contrarian hipster. I'm not like a communist, but I'm definitely not a capitalist, and I'm definitely left-wing, and I definitely voted to remain in the EU referendum. And so time goes by, I grow up, and I remember I got, I had a few jobs working like fucking Sainsbury's or B&Q, and that was further fueling my sort of anti-capitalist feelings. But I remember I got one job, and I met this geezer, and he was a proper right-winger.
Capitalism is good because capitalism is freedom. Socialism is bad because socialism is tyranny.
It was like a right-winger in the flesh. I'd never seen one before. I was like, what the fuck hell is this? Capitalism good? Welfare state bad? NHS bad? But you see, although I deeply disagreed with all of his views at the beginning, you gotta remember 13-year-old contrarian Jimmy. He's still in there somewhere. And what he's hearing is contrarian views, you say. anti-establishment, non-mainstream. Little old hipster Jimmy lapped up this sort of right-wing rhetoric because I realized it was different to everyone else, and that would make me interesting if I believed all these things, right? And like, when I say right-wing, it's not, you know, we don't like foreigners. It's stuff like this.
The people who get on welfare lose their human independence and feeling of dignity. They become subject to the dictates and whims of their welfare.
It's really funny because the presentation of this stuff is considered anti-establishment, but it is the most establishment you can get. That's what's hilarious about it. When you have a guy like Milton Friedman being portrayed as an anti-establishment figure, like I'm not, you know, shitting on current Jimmy, right? But I'm saying that like there are a lot of people who probably have had this exact same experience where they think liberalism is woke video games or whatever the fuck, right? And it's anti-establishment to be conservative because everything is liberal and woke video games. When this guy is the most established right-winger you can get, like as established as you can get. His worldview is the neoliberal uniparty. Like people, this is it. He is I mean, yeah, he was a Reagan advisor personally. His writings, his academic literature played a formative role in undermining the global South. It does not get more establishment than that. Just like it doesn't get more like your dad's point of view than Ben Shapiro.
Peer supervisor who can tell them whether they can live here or there, whether they may put in a telephone, what they may do with their lives. They're treated like children.
So now I'm at the doors of the alt-right pipeline, right? I pick up my hat with the light, turn the torch on, grab my pickaxe, and I head in. And the first stop is Jordan Peterson.
And then if I'd said to you, please, I'd rather go by she, how would you respond to that on a personal level? How would
The way I have responded to that, because I've had a number of conversations with transgendered individuals, is that I use whatever pronoun seems to go along with the persona that they're projecting publicly.
How can I describe the fact that someone who was once a woman, and really still is, had her breasts cut off because she, he, they, their, them had fallen prey to a viciously harmful fad?
So bear in mind, I didn't go to university. I went and just tried to make little businesses. I did a parkour brand, I ran a vegan food store, I did lots of little things. And very importantly, I was not academic.
This motherfucker was all over the place, bro, politically.
Jordan Peterson, to young Jimmy, sounded like how I imagine smart people sound.
So even if you do happen to be that avatar of moral purity that you claim implicitly, the probability that you'd get to act out your goodness in relationship to those possessed by your ideology is zero.
He would use big words, he would do this with his hands, he would think and contemplate. Like he was the sort of caricature of a smart person. And it was very interesting because all of his views tended to be quite contrarian.
I think there's something really interesting about this, especially if Destiny played a formative role in him escaping the alt-right pipeline. What this man doesn't recognize is that he went from one, contrarian figurehead to the other who also falsely presents themselves as like an intellectual giant. Ultimately, though, I will say it's marginally better, I guess, as long as he doesn't pick up on a lot of the other habits, like advocating for white people's right to say the N-word or whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? Or constantly fucking spending time and effort on shitting on left-wing people, or, getting a little too close and personal with neo-Nazis and white nationalists.
Two sort of mainstream views. And he would, again, like my friend, he would talk about the benefits of capitalism. He would talk about natural hierarchies and that it wasn't capitalism's fault for hierarchies, but hierarchies are natural. And so it's very interesting because if you think about what Jordan Peterson is and what he thinks and his words now, back in 2016, it was very different, right?
As a matter of respect, in fact, would you refer to a trans person who asked you to use they, them pronouns, a pronoun which has a several hundred-year historical...
But that's not what we're talking about.
He rises to fame on what he is portraying as a free speech battle. The Canadian government are trying to make it so that if you say the wrong pronouns to a transgender person, you will go to jail. And Jordan Peterson never says something like, I don't...
By the way, that's not even true. I think we always forget to factor in how much of right-wing sentiment is just a lie and how effective just simply lying from a biased perspective is. I know he doesn't have these opinions, by the way. Now, I'm saying that, like, I'm talking to old Jimmy, right? Old Jimmy the Giant, Jimmy the Little, before he became Jimmy the Giant. It's pretty interesting that an expansion of pre-existing hate crime statutes factored in misgendering, like intentional and deliberate routine misgendering, got so much pickup all around the planet. And it got so bad that the Canadian Bar Association had to basically write out statements over and over again being like, this is not true. Like what Jordan Peterson is saying is just a lie, and nobody cared. Everyone got swept away.
I don't believe in trans people, and so I don't believe I should say their pronouns. He's not saying that people who do transgender surgeries are butchers. He is saying that by law, I shouldn't be forced to say anything.
Difference between saying that there's something you can't say and saying that there are things that you have to say. And I regard these made-up pronouns, all of them, as the neologisms of radical PC authoritarians.
As I grew up, I kind of realized he misrepresented this bill and he was blowing things out of proportion. But if we just take it on face value and believe what he was saying, then yeah, it seemed illogical to oppose what he was saying. And so whilst I'm going through Jordan Peterson's books, his podcasts, his speeches, etc., I'm getting this feeling that there's this sort of crazy, indoctrinated Marxist left who are trying to suppress your freedom and usher in communism. And so all this is happening all the way in Canada where no one gives a fuck about. But what about here in Britain, right? In Britain, we have a sort of similar scenario. And it involves a man, a very controversial man, by the name of Tommy Robinson. Before we go any further, I want to give a massive shout out to today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is undoubtedly the best, I'm not kidding, the best platform when it comes to making websites. Beautiful websites, ones that are perfectly tailored to you. With their new design intelligence, which combines the newest AI technology, plus their years of understanding and crafting beautiful website templates, you can now literally type in prompts